A little while ago, I restored this incredible 90s Game Boy Kiosk. This is my favorite thing I own, and I think it's possibly one of the most iconic pieces of Nintendo's history. Well, a few days ago, I was scrolling around on the interwebs when I stumbled across this. A miniature Game Boy Kiosk made using a 3D printer. Wow, that is so cool. I want one. My head also started filling up with ideas of things I'd add and modify to make it my own, but I've got to say a huge thank you to Make3D for doing all of the hard work designing this beautiful thing. Luckily, Bamboo Labs wanted to work with me on a video, so they sent me this. This is their all-new P2S printer with AMS combo. It's super duper cool. Thank you, Bamboo Labs. Let's get printing. You haven't 3D printed? What are you, living in 2005? Get with the times! This is an unbelievably satisfying thing to do and a great little hobby. These files were designed very well and Bamboo's software pretty much does the rest for you. The smaller pieces I printed at a higher quality, so they took a few hours to do. The bigger ones I did at a slightly lower quality to make them print quicker, but they still took several hours to print. Just look at all of those trees the software generates to ensure all of the overhangs print properly. And here they are, in all of their glory. I'm amazed at how well these have turned out, and I'm so excited to start building everything. But before we do, we've got to remove all of the little trees. This is a rather satisfying job. The way they printed is such that they don't make a firm connection to the surfaces, meaning they offer the support, but they're easy to just snap off with minimal cleaning up required. So let's go ahead and remove all of these. These little cylindrical cutouts are for some magnets. This is something which the original creator of the design came up with, and he linked all of the bits you need in his project, so I'll make sure that that's in the description below. These just press into place, and I'm using a little bit of super glue to hold them in there securely. With all of those on, plus the tabs which stick out, this won't be going anywhere. Now the two halves are together, we can go about gluing the plastic bands on. And with that, they're on. I am so pleased with how this is all coming along. The colored bands have made a huge difference. Some of you may have already noticed there's a big hole here. Now that is actually not in the original design. In the original design, it's completely covered up and they had a Game Boy logo that goes along here. And that is to look like the original Nintendo Game Boy Kiosk that had a Game Boy logo above the screen. So they've sort of tried to shrink all of that down. However, I have made the executive decision to put a light up banner in the top. And the other thing I've changed, on the original design, there's a cutout along here for a strip of LEDs. Now that's really cool. I think that what that does is it creates a slightly more modern, sleek Game Boy Kiosk, which is awesome, but I want to go for something that looks like it could actually be an original old Nintendo kiosk. So to go along with that, I have managed to find one of the coolest things I've ever bought on, I think it was eBay. This is a USB light bulb holder. Look at that. It's a little LED bulb, but it looks so perfect. And this is the kind of thing that is used in the actual Nintendo kiosk that I have. So this is gonna be perfect. It's gonna go in here, and then it's gonna cast a light on the screen of the Game Boy. Look at that. So once I get that angle right, not exactly sure where it's gonna go. We don't wanna see the reflection of the bulb, as we're looking down and playing it. So it's probably gonna be something like that. So we've actually got some very complicated things to work out. We need to make the banner. That's probably the first thing because we need to see how that's gonna look with the light bulb behind it and where it's gonna be and get the perfect angle to light up the screen. Make a mount to hold this. I'm gonna attempt to design that myself using my 3D printer and my limited CAD skills. We then need to power this all because I don't want just one USB cable coming out. And then once we put some power in here, I'm gonna do a couple of other really cool things. So let's start with the artwork. I'm going to very quickly show you how I adjusted the file since some people might want to do this themselves. There's some tools in the Bamboo software which allow you to add and remove parts in your print file really easily. You can just add different shapes, resize them, and move them about. And at the end, just before you print, you can now see these changes in effect. I used the artwork from my first kiosk video since I really like it. I just had to change the size and shape of it and move some bits around. There's some more artwork I need to create, which I'm going to turn into stickers. These existed on one of the much rarer kiosks which I don't own, but I happen to have a friend who does.
Here you go, Elliot, and good luck on your projects.
Thank you, Steve, for sending me the pictures of your kiosk. With those, I can now get to work recreating the stickers. It's time to visit my friends to get this all brought to life, and there's no one better for the job than SAS Graphics. These guys helped me in my kiosk restoration and they were absolutely brilliant. This time I'm coming to them to help me make some stickers, as well as the light up acrylic marquee. This is a laser-guided cutting machine, and it made light work cutting out all of the stickers. And with that, I had what I needed. Now it's time to put it together. I am pleased with how this came out, but on the original it's recessed below the opening. In my opinion, this looks much better. If I did this again, I'd use a little bracket like this and glue it behind. Unfortunately, I've run out of filament for this, so I'll just call this Mark 1 and we can get on with the assembly. With the marquee in place, I can work out where the light bulb needs to be to light up the Game Boy screen. And then I can get to work designing my very first 3D print. Are you ready? It's shit. But don't let its appearance fool you. This little piece slides perfectly over the bulb holder and will hold the light at the correct height. The next thing I wanted to add was speakers. This isn't going to be much of a store display kiosk if no one can hear the quiet Game Boy speaker. Plus, they need the stereo experience. These can only go here, for reasons which you will learn later, so I set about taking them apart and designing my next incredible 3D print to hold them in place. 2 top hats. Yeah, but wait, with notches cut out. I know, I'm basically an engineer now. We're going to have to do something to prevent light leak, so I found this thin metal which I can cut up and stick into place. It will obviously also help reflect the light. I added some double-sided foam tape to adhere the speakers to hold them into the brackets. I could then slide the top hat over and thread the wire through the notch. I then added some double-sided tape to the metal shield and cut out all of the pieces which we don't need. I'm also going to add some more metal up here to prevent light leaking out of the top, since the 3D print is fairly translucent. I need to obviously add some speaker holes, so I designed a small template based off of my original one so that I can mark where they needed to go. I then got my trusty friend the Dremel out to drill all of these holes. They actually came out sick. Now it's time to glue the components in. I'm going to now shorten all of the wires since they don't need to be this long. I don't want a bunch of long cables behind here. This is a fairly self-explanatory process, just cut, strip and tin the wires and then solder them back into place. With that done, I adhered the volume slider down with some double-sided foam tape. This is just going to be set to max volume, but it's handy to be able to adjust it. Next up, I'll do the same with the light bulb wire. Now the final thing to add is a USB Game Boy cable, made by Lab 15. It's a great cable and I'm now going to cut it in half. This is actually so that I can add a small button which will reset the Game Boy. This is a homage to the original kiosk which resets the entire unit if the screen isn't on. This is a fairly straightforward process, just solder the black wires to each other and the red wire to either leg of the switch. I then need to mark out and drill a hole so that I can screw the button into place. Since the plastic here is quite thick, I needed to remove some material from behind. That will allow me to screw the nut down onto the switch and secure it in place. To power all of this, I'm going to be using a USB hub. This is going to get positioned in the bottom corner, and that leads me on to introduce my next 3D print. Boom. I'm actually really proud of this one. It has a perfectly curved edge which slots seamlessly into the corner of this back piece. Then I marked out a hole and drilled it so that we could plug the power cable into the USB hub. Then I'll add some glue to the USB hub holder and set that down. Now comes the finishing touches. I can add some double-sided adhesive tape for the marquee and stick it down. And finally, I added the stickers.
They said it wasn't humanly possible. All the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand. Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. And the outrageous new game Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo.
This thing is so sick. I could not be happier with how it has all turned out. All of the artwork combined just gives it that retro feel, and it really does look like something that would have actually been in stores in the 90s. And next to my original one, it really does look in place. Massive thank you to Steve for sending me the photos of his stickers so that I could recreate them, and a big thank you to Make 3D for designing the whole outside shell. Obviously everything else has been put together by yours truly with help from SAS Graphics, but yeah, it just looks so cool, and I love the little reset switch. That just has a little bit of color and technicality just in there. I think it adds something to it, definitely. The speaker holes look fantastic, as does that little hole for the light that comes out. Seriously, the whole thing is just epic. Originally, the guy who designed it to be mounted to a wall, which is why it opens like this, so that you could sort of lift it off the wall. It's quite hard. These magnets are really, really strong. There we go. So having it mounted to the wall would have meant that you could have pulled it off, and that would have given you access to the inside so that you could have screwed it to the wall. And obviously in his original design, he didn't have any of the wiring for the speakers and the power and stuff, so you could just swap out the Game Boy. This one, obviously, a little bit harder. You have to unplug the power cable and the speaker and then you can slide out the Game Boy. And that's actually really cool because it means you could swap this out all the time with a different Game Boy. Like maybe you could use some of the Play It Loud ones. This is the mysterious Game Boy, which says for display only. Unit will not work if separated from display. So it is actually supposed to be for some sort of a kiosk. But chatting to people within the community, they've told me that they think that this sticker is actually from a different console. So it is kind of right in that the text is actually accurate, and this sticker probably did belong to a kiosk of some description, but I don't think it's quite accurate on this specific Game Boy because the original kiosk Game Boy has a much smaller little display sticker here, but it works perfectly in this. And of course we've got a copy of Tetris in there. But yeah, taking a little look inside, it's just so neat. I am so pleased with how it's all come out. There's one extra USB port here, so let me know what you would add to it. But everything is just perfect. And you've got individual switches on the USB hub if you didn't want something or if you wanted to change something. So it's just so cool. It is seriously epic and I'm just so proud of it. I did actually add one other thing which I didn't show. This is a little magnetic base. So obviously, as I said, this is supposed to be mounted to a wall, but I'm a sucker for a shelf. So this is going to go on a shelf and I didn't want it just sitting on these two sort of rails. So I designed this, which fits absolutely perfectly in those little, you know, those little bands there, but it's magnetic. I added magnets to it so that it can sort of perfectly align up and sit perfectly like that. So I basically just designed these little hats that the magnets get glued into. Then I could work out where the center was, position it, and then I could stick one of the magnets in place while I glued the other one down, and then I could repeat that for the other magnet and then repeat it for the other side, and then that is what you end up with. I think I need to put some sort of a rubber little foot on here as well, but yeah, I mean, that works absolutely perfectly. So let's go ahead and plug it in. Here's the little hole for the power cable, which I'm very proud of. And I 3D printed a tiny little ring to go around it. So that just sits in there and then it all just comes to life. I cannot get over how epic that looks. And I love the little vignetting in the corner. It just all looks so original and retro, and that's obviously very much what I've gone for. The little reset switch works absolutely perfectly and just resets the Game Boy. Again, a sort of a tribute to the original one. So that is just something that I'm really pleased with. If you do this yourself, make sure you buy a normally closed switch. There's two different kinds. Normally open and normally closed. You need a normally closed switch for this one. I actually had this marquee reprinted. You might have noticed that the original one that I stuck down was quite destroyed up here. That was because I got the measurements wrong. So I had just sanded it down, which obviously just didn't look very good. So I gave them the right measurements and they reprinted it very kindly for me. If I did this again though, I would definitely use that bracket and glue it from behind or adhere it from behind in some way. I didn't want to tackle cutting off that bezel piece that this sat onto. I was worried it was going to come out looking all jagged and janky, and as I said, I ran out of filament to print it all again. So if I did this again, that would be the one thing I would change, because you do get a little bit of a sort of a letterboxing effect where the light doesn't shine through the 3D printed part. And of course, I've got to say a big thank you to Bamboo Labs for sponsoring this video. The P2S printer is such a treat to use. The new 5-inch touchscreen is absolutely awesome. The user interface is beautiful and super easy to understand. I got the AMS combo, which comes with that big piece that sits on top so that you can load that up with different filament. This is actually the AMS2 Pro and has a feature with it where you can actually dry the filament inside the AMS, which is super handy to get rid of things like stringing. It has loads of other features too, like adaptive airflow cooling and a 1080p high rate live view camera, which you saw at the start of the video. Definitely check out their P2S printer in the description below. And that is going to be it for this video. I'm so chuffed with how it's turned out. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.